I first thought about a job in the third sector because I wanted to have a role that would do something more immediate, that would go beyond just working away for some hypothetical bottom line.
The way that I see it is that there's kind of three sort of jobs in charities. There's the people who make the money, there's the people who spend the money, and there's people who do all the back office kind of things, the HR, the finances. The first time I used an agency was because I was fairly new to this sector. I didn't know who was who. I didn't know really what the going rates were or what different types of jobs were available. And I got a lot of help, both in advice in terms of how to present myself, what sort of things I should be going for, straight into a network, and it was a very simple process, really.
My name's Ellen Drummond, and I'm the communications consultant here at TPP, not-for-profit. So we specialise in recruitment for the charity sector, public sector, and not-for-profit. And I cover marketing, communications, and those sorts of functions within that area. To get the right agency, you have to be able to, have this open door policy and feel that you're being listened to. It's very much like a partnership between, the recruitment consultant, the client, who in this case would be a charity, and also the candidate. It's very much a three-way thing, so you need to make sure that, everyone's putting in the right amount of work.
Well, agencies can either be specialist or generalist, and I think there's arguments in favour of both those. What I would say is that the third sector, in common with any other business, has its own ethos, its own vocabulary, its own style, and dare one even say sort of rules of doing things. And it's possibly better, therefore, that an agency actually specialises in that and actually understands the language of the sector in which they're operating.
I think, in terms of asking the question specialist or non-specialist agency, what you need to be looking for is good representation. That is the point of the exercise. An organisation that's got, particularly in the charity sector, who's got a lot of experience within the sector, so they know who they're dealing with, what kind of clients, and then at the same time someone who's actually got a name within the sector. But I also think it's just as important to have a consultant who you can really relate to and who's empathetic to your needs and your motivations and what you're actually looking for and want to do.
I think that one of the best ways to find a good agency is looking at the website. Third Sector magazine is also quite useful. A lot of the time the agencies will advertise themselves in the paper, such as The Guardian, and you can always look through that and see, well, which agencies keep coming up.
TPP were actually recommended to me by a former colleague, so I think that's an indication of how important networking is in this business. The agencies themselves are working all the time to develop their network of contacts in corporates, in not-for-profit sector companies, and with the client base themselves.
Agencies tend to advertise themselves within the niche that they support. So, for example, look at the press, look at advertising as well. If you see an agency that is holding a lot of relevant roles for you, then that clearly suggests that you should go and speak to them. And again, looking at The Guardian online, is a great way, for example, of picking up agencies that are holding those jobs.
I think the main difference, though, is between high street and obviously a specialist recruiter. High street obviously is sort of very different types of roles, and anyone can kind of just come in and see what's around, whereas for a specialist agency, we would need to see a CV first. We'd need to have a conversation with a candidate first before we would actually ask them to come in, because we only want to take someone's time up if we know we can help that person.
There are very few agencies that do charge the candidate, but we and the vast majority of agencies actually charge the client. And so no, there's no charge for the candidate.
I very much look at it that job hunting is a very stressful business. My role very much so is to completely take the pressure off. I send the jobs through, I find them for them, I send the CVs over, I deal with salary negotiations, interviews, everything. So it is very much it's a much smoother process, I think.
If you're being offered positions that don't really match what you're after, then that comes down to the consultant probably not listening to you. And if the consultant hasn't listened to you, then you either need to give them a second chance and advise them, remind them exactly what it is you're after, or you need to draw a line and say, look, this consultant isn't for me.
If you don't like something, it's all just about being open and honest and quite frank, and you need to be in a position where you can do that with your consultant. And we need to know what candidates want, and as long as that communication's there, we can get there. So it's all just about being very open and honest. This sector is all about having a passion. Volunteering on your CV shows that you do have that passion and that it's something that you really want to do for yourself and for other people.
Absolutely, yeah. I think volunteering is the best way to get an insight into how charities work, what their pressures are, what the jobs are, who's who does what.
I think it's very important that people who work in the third sector have that grounding. That it is the voluntary aspect of a lot of what we do that makes the third sector, very, very distinctive.
I've also been in positions where I've had to recruit a number of people into the sector, and the most important thing I will ever look for is their voluntary experience. I think, especially if you're taking someone out of university, it's the only evidence really that you've got of someone who is committed to charitable work.
They need to make sure that it's the right kind of voluntary work. Just running a marathon or whatever isn't really what I'm after. It's more about becoming a trustee or a treasurer.
When we put a candidate into a role, what we want is to make a good fit. We want it to be a good fit. We want it to be a lasting relationship. We do stay in touch with our candidates once we have placed them. And if it doesn't work out, then what we need to do is just support both our client, find them somebody else, and support our candidate and help them get something else. It isn't great when these sorts of things happen. They don't happen very often, but when they are, you just have to manage them as best you can. All that a client sees of a candidate in the first introduction is a piece of paper, and it has to be, as good as we can possibly make it.
We don't rewrite the CV, but we would certainly advise the candidate that their CV could be stronger if they added various achievements or specifically statistics to their CV. And then we, as an agency, summarise their background and particular points we think are useful to the hiring organisation.
In terms of advice and job searching, it's very stressful, it's very difficult, and at the end of the day, if you can find someone, an agency or a consultant who can help you with that and can take off some of the burden, then just go for it. It's a free service. You really can't lose.
The best advice I would give to anyone wanting to work in the charitable sector is volunteer.